Celtics Reddit podcast.
Back out to Smart. Fakes the pass all the time. Three. Bang! It's Williams three. Lobs it up for Robert Williams.
Shouldn't he know? Jaylen Brown. What a thunder!
Tatum. Durant, the long reach. Tatum crossover pull-up jumper. It's good. 50 points for Jason Tatum.
Hello and welcome everybody back to another episode of the Celtics Reddit podcast. I'm your host, Celtics J, and I am joined, as I frequently am, by Mr. Wayne Spooney himself. We're catching up with y'all at the halftime of the game right now against the Pacers. Spoons, what are you seeing so far?
Well, first of all, Jay, it's good to be back from my...
No small talk. Let's get right into it. This is halftime, baby. What are you doing?
Right.
Like, come
Nobody
on. People
missed
know
me
who we
anyway,
are.
right? So I am seeing yet another incredibly frustrating game against a Central Division team. Like, what is it with these motherfuckers in the Central United States? Like, dude, Halliburton's just like, what is he, 5 for 5 from three?
MVP, apparently.
And they're not easy threes either. And Tatum can't throw it in the ocean. I think he's hit 1 3. He's had like 2 rattle out. And I think if you switch 2 of those, this is a much different looking game. But I don't know. We've looked a little sloppy. We look a little bit out of it. Frankly, we look like we're kind of hoping we can go through the motions and just beat a bad team on our home court. And we might be able to.
And I kind of wonder, especially after the news with Rob, and we're gonna talk a little bit more focused on Rob in a couple minutes here. But I wonder if some of the guys aren't kind of thinking to themselves, listen, we want to win, but we also need to make sure we don't get hurt. Because I do think they've got some like special energy going right now, and it can get real dicey real quick if even one other person goes down, you know, especially if it's someone that's a key contributor to the starting lineup. A couple of things that stood out for me. I mean, even with the struggles that we're having, we're carrying leads, and I do like that. We went into the second quarter with a 9-point lead, and I really like that. We went into half with a lead. We were withstanding some of the runs that are coming. Spoons, does this team look like they're playing differently? Besides the obvious absence of Rob, like, what are you seeing as far as, you know, we've seen 2 different lineups. We've seen Grant in the starting lineup. We've now seen Theis in the starting lineup. We're seeing them even just play on the court a little differently. Like, the defense looks different now. The offense is looking a little different. What are you seeing?
So I think, and I'll get into this a little bit when we talk a little bit more about Rob and what we can expect going forward, but I'm not super shocked to see Theis in the starting lineup over Grant. Like I said, we'll get to that a little bit later. I think the biggest thing I've noticed, and Scal called it out tonight, and I think it was very obvious in the Heat game, we aren't switching pick and rolls anymore. And I don't know if that's a Rob isn't out there related change or look, you go into the playoffs, you cannot play one style of defense. You can win a round like that, maybe 2. You cannot win a championship playing one style of defense. That's what always got the Bucks, is they only played defense one way. They played Brook Lopez, drop coverage against the pick and roll, and eventually they'd run into a team where their ball handler could just pull up, hit a 3, and they'd lose, right? Like Kemba used to roast the Bucks when he was feeling good because Brook would drop, he'd step into a 3, and he'd have 35 points, right? So last year, all through the season, they learned how to switch. They learned how to play defense without Brook and are already elite when they play the way they play with Brook. Lo and behold, they win a championship. So I wonder if this is just kind of unfortunate timing of Rob's injury, that Udoka's trying to roll this out, right? We've got 6 or 5 games left. We're pretty locked in to at least the top 6 seed. I think we are locked into a top 6 seed now. I wonder if he's like, look, we can't switch everything against every lineup in the playoffs, right? You switch everything against Kevin Durant, he will kill you. You're begging him to pick whoever he wants to match up against. You need to be able to play drop. You need to be able to trap. You need to be able to do different stuff at a high level in the playoffs. So I think it might be partially that. And also, Rob is really fucking good at switching. And,
I mean, that defense does seem to benefit a great deal from the fact that Rob can just do some special things.
Indeed, he can. And like many
you can
different
design a defense around a little bit because he brings that unique dynamic to
it. Exactly.
But I think I'm hearing what you're saying, and that makes sense to me. I feel like there's a logic to that line of reasoning in that, we've got a couple of weeks here going into the playoffs. Because one of the things that you have to go in wondering is what are other teams going to try to exploit? And again, I think we're going to unpack that in the next piece a little bit. Just closing out thoughts on this first half before we dive into the rest of what we got for this episode, and then go and enjoy the second half ourselves here. Early turnovers in this game, but it did seem to settle down. Like we're kind of noting, the defense just doesn't quite look the same. It doesn't have the same resonance that it had over the last couple months. But that being said, again, I do like the fact that they're still withstanding the runs from the other teams. We're not looking as elite,
for sure,
but we're also not looking nearly as bad as we did before that run, which is kind of comforting for me because I was worried we were just going to bottom back out.
Yeah.
And we haven't done that.
No, not at all. I mean, I think partially like Tatum, Pritchard, and Grant had terrible shooting games against the Heat, right? And we gave Miami everything they could handle in that game. And frankly, of course, we got a Reddit comment, user Dusting Off says, I knew we were losing the instant I heard we were honoring a Celtic legend, which is like, yeah, every time we honor a Celtics legend, we lose. So we should have saw that coming. But really, they each make one of their many, many missed threes, and we win that game. And we didn't play that well, right? So if we're hanging with a great team like Miami, I think to your point, Jay, this still, is it the insane, like, acid trip Celtics of 3 weeks ago?
They're not going to humiliate the league anymore.
Yeah,
Thanks, Scal, by the way.
Yeah, right. Since he said that too. No, but they're still a really, really good team, and they could definitely win a first round series, even in the absence of Rob. So I'm not super worried, but yeah, I think there's like a withdrawals of watching a team be that locked in for 2 months. It's like you went on a bender, and all of a sudden you're like, oh man,
we're not winning by 20. We must be a lottery team now.
Exactly. We must be terrible. We're not beating the Heat by 50.
You don't win by 20, you lose by 20. There's no in between here.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about, these changes that we're noticing. And of course, everyone's anxieties and worries going into the playoffs, because the question is, are we going to have Rob? And if so, for at what point and for, and to what extent, I suppose, because ultimately this knee stuff is the scariest stuff as far as, at least in my opinion, especially for guys that are so dynamic, in part because of their elite athleticism. What I've liked is Rob's been able to tone it down a little bit and have more discipline this season, but nonetheless, he still needs all of that lateral quickness, especially that knee-jerk twitch movement that he utilizes to make up space and to get into the air so quickly. So hopefully this new med team that we got is everything that Al's been recently building it up to be. Our medical team took some hits in years past. It's been completely overhauled. Sounds like Al's pretty happy with it. Early signs are showing, or at least sounding like, optimism for Rob's case.
Yeah.
And so, we are hearing that timetable could be a little bit quicker than initially thought of. Let me just kind of go right to you here. Do you think that, this is completely devastating and we've lost all hope of competing at the highest level, or is there still some light here at the end of the tunnel?
So I think there's a user 2K Ball is Life had a post, and I think this kind of mirrors what I think. Rob is the difference against playoff caliber teams, as we saw tonight. This is after the Heat game. Long story short, Rob is the reason we were beating good teams by 15-20. We are good without Rob, but special with him. I mean,
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Yeah, 2K Ball is Life.
The 2K Ball is Life.
Which I vehemently disagree with. That game is so frustrating.
True.
I'm so
yeah,
bad.
Yeah, living in a world of microtransactions. Enjoy that, man. Yeah. You're making way more than me.
Maybe 2K5 or something. But regardless, like
making those 2K bucks. Yeah. That's
it's like Rob is, without Rob, we're like a good 45-46 win team that will, like, you don't want to see him in the playoffs. With Rob, it's like, are we watching the best team at basketball right now? And I think that's just a fundamental difference. And to your point on the knee thing, Jay, and Rob, like, what makes Rob himself so special is that explosive athleticism. And if he loses even like 10% of that and becomes just like a very good athlete, it kind of concerns me about his long-term future. Anyway, but all indications are that's not going to happen, right? So I'm trying to sleep good at night, but you know how it is, man.
Yeah, and but what I also like is that Brad Stevens' comments that have come out recently have really focused and been fixated on the decisions that are getting made are not getting made with anything to do with what happens on the basketball court, but solely to do with what's in the best interest of Rob's health. And I think ultimately that also does lead to the best possible outcomes on the court. I mean, whether you get him back sooner, it doesn't matter if you get him back sooner and he just ends up getting hurt again more severely. And now he's got a chronic issue for the rest of his life. And not only then, but now you're really impacting this dude's life off the court, right? And we've already seen really the devastating impact that it can have on players. And so I like that the mentality and the approach right now is player centric, is focused on his well-being, and I guess admittedly, what's Brad going to do? Come out and say, listen, we're getting him back out on the court as soon as possible, regardless of how it compromised. So like, I admit, and I'm willing to, sort of eat the humility on that one.
But you're right.
Not an earth shattering take.
But I think, like that's the obvious thing to say, but it's also true. Right. And I think that's good to hear because there's certainly been times dudes have been rushed back onto the court or played too much in an all-star game by a rival head coach and all of a sudden he's never the same player again. I mean, that shit happens, man. And I have zero concern the Celtics will do that to Rob Williams. So it's just a matter of if that knee holds up.
So let me ask you this, Spoons. With Rob's absence and until he does make his return to the court, is this more about, and thinking within the context of wanting to compete at the highest level, is this more about Grant Williams stepping up? Or is this more about Daniel Theis filling in? So
I think it's more Theis filling in because Theis is kind of like a poor man's Rob. They have similar skill sets. He's a decent pick and roll threat. He can switch a little bit. He can protect the rim a little bit. Obviously, Rob is much better at all of those things than Theis. And that's why he's like borderline all-star value on the court. And Theis is like, kind of a decent player. But it's a lot easier to put a guy with a similar skill set and play the exact same way you've been playing than it is and go to Grant, who is just a fundamentally different player. He's a good player. He's got a skill set we need, especially off the bench with his shooting and his switchability, but he just makes you play a different way because if you've probably noticed, but Theis is in that Rob role where he's like guarding the power forward and helping. You can't do that. We didn't have Grant Williams fly out of the corner trying to block shots. Like, I'd like to see it for fun, but then you're asking Horford to do that. And, you know, he's 35 years old. It's just not really his game anymore. So I think it's really more like Theis just needs to be like 70-75% of Rob, and I think he can be. I think he has been, really. I've got no concerns with how Theis has been playing.
I've liked the way he's looked so far tonight. I mean, I thought he did a real nice job in the first half. I like his aggressiveness on the boards. I'm seeing the verticality. Like, you know who he's reminding me of? You know, I like the idea of kind of considering him as sort of the discount Rob Williams. But he's also kind of like giving me those shades of Baines a little bit, and shout out and prayers to Baines. That if anyone's unfamiliar, that man has had a real shit go of it. And so anyone that's got, any goodness in them, please send some good health and positive energy vibes out to Baines, because the Celtics community still loves that guy. All of Australia, all of Boston fandom loves all of Australia. I'll tell you right now. But I've been seeing that kind of dynamic from him, where he's not super flashy, but he's just doing all the steady work that needs to happen to keep things from getting derailed or off track. Exactly. You know, he's just playing the role real solid, real steady, and that's all you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And a little note here from a Reddit user, Shaftvan12. His post is on Derek White and Daniel Theis, and he's noticed that when they're on the court together, their connection reminds me of Smart and Williams in terms of offense and how they run the pick and roll together. And I mean, they do. They operate a very smooth pick and roll. And you know what else is smooth, Jay? My balls. You know why? Because we have a sponsor, and that sponsor is Manscaped. Support for the Celtics Reddit podcast is brought to you by Manscaped. We are happy to introduce them as our first sponsor. They're the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. They offer precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Jay and I both have ours. I have used mine multiple times. My wife has used it on me as well. Too much information, I apologize. But join over 4 million men.
That's a different podcast, man.
Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. We have an exclusive offer for you, our listener, who we love, and we hope you use it. It's 20% off, free worldwide shipping with the code CRPOD at manscaped.com. And if my math's correct, that's 8 million balls. Jay, how are you liking the Manscaped?
Man, I gotta tell you, I don't know what's smoother right now, my nether regions or you handling that promo bit right there. Like, I don't know which is, but I'll tell you, I remember being a younger version of Celtics Jay. And first, you know, venturing out into that dangerous and terrifying world of dating, right? And you know, you've realized you've gotta be up to par, right? Like, you've got to keep things the way you want to keep your place the same way you'd want your partner's place to be kept, right? Like, you want some equity there.
Yeah, sure.
I remember but there's no tutorials on this. No one really talks to you about any of this, and you don't know you need like any special considerations.
This is pre-YouTube.
First time I ever went at this, I'm telling you right now, it looked like a Carrie movie. It was a disaster, and it was everywhere. I didn't know what was happening. And so the fact that there's some, like, you know, focused products specifically designed to help keep that business secure, I think that's an important thing. And I think it's an important discussion to have with young men everywhere. Young men and women, for that matter. Because again, this type of hygiene is not unique to any particular gender here. Like, this is boundaryless. I'm especially, what I really like about it too is I've gone through so many trimmers in the past that just are like these flimsy plastic,
cheapos,
you know,
man.
Ridiculous.
That's not
nonsense.
the case. These are like,
and I travel. I'm on the road all the time. I can't be having that kind of mess.
Yeah, I know.
And so the fact that this is just like a well-made, like, you know, you can feel it. Like, it just feels like it's well put together. It's got the right kind of heft to it. And I also dig the fact that it's waterproof, and I don't have to, like, you know, try to hover above the freaking toilet every time I'm trying to, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's a delicate. I'm not as coordinated and well balanced as it was as a younger Jay.
That's right. And so we've got the Performance Package 4.0. Like I said, we both already used it. I love it. It's wonderful. That comes with the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear, nose, hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver ball deodorant that works, trust me, the Crop Reviver toner, performance boxer briefs, and a sweet little like leather travel bag that is super nice. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code CRPOD at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use our code. That's right, we have an advertiser, CRPOD. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
Woo woo. Lovely. Well done.
Well done. Thank you. Well done to you, Jay. That was a beautiful story. I'm now picturing your mangled balls.
Please no. Oh, God.
All right. Anyway, back to Derek White and Daniel Theis running the pick and roll together. I agree. I think there's lineup data. They're doing really well together when they're out there. Well, they're doing well in certain lineups together. Makes sense. White's good pick and roll player. Theis, pretty solid as a pick and roll man. So I like that. I love that we have those guys off the bench when Rob's back, but it's nice to have a dude that can give you those sorts of things that Rob Williams brings to the team, even if it's a slightly worse version.
And just for any of those that are watching on YouTube, do appreciate and enjoy the capillaries opening up in my face as I've just shared a very intimate story in support of our sponsor here. We're very excited, but
many more to come, hopefully.
Enjoy. That's how you know it's genuine. When the host's face turns red from sharing the personal story, you know he's being real about it. So I'm just putting that out there. So I want to ask you, Spoons, what lineups have looked good without Rob, and which lineups are you worried about having targeted in the playoffs?
Okay, so there's one disaster lineup without Rob that doesn't feature Dennis Schroeder. Every single bad lineup had Dennis Schroeder. Like, then there's like 10 of them. This is all at least 25 minutes played. But the good, and I'll get to what that lineup is. The good lineups are actually super diverse. There's a lot of them. So Pritchard, Derek White, Tatum, Grant, Horford, plus 41 in 34 minutes. Killing people, lots of shooting around Derek White. That's a nice lineup. Defensively versatile, makes sense. The double point guard, Smart, White, Tatum. You'll notice Tatum is in every single one of these lineups. Imagine that.
That's going to be a thing.
Yeah, Smart, White, Tatum, Grant, Horford again. Great lineup, plus 18.5. Derek White, Jalen, the Jays, Grant, Horford again, plus 14.2. And then the first one with Theis on it, but it's got 36 minutes played, so pretty solid. Pritchard, Derek White, Tatum, Grant Williams, Daniel Theis, plus 10. So,
okay.
And that's, 200-ish minutes, give or take, 150 minutes without Rob. And that is like beating the shit out of teams' good lineups, plus 18, plus 14, plus 10. That's like best team in the league level basketball. So
we clearly have to make adjustments.
For sure.
Mean, you don't lose a guy like Rob and not have to make adjustments. But this is kind of nice because what you're sharing is helping me feel a little bit more at ease, because on one hand, when this all first went down, anytime there's ever been an injury to a starter on the Celtics, I immediately assume we're going back to the early to mid 90s, and I just need to find a new way to deal with that.
Yeah. Sadness.
But it does seem like Ime has maybe kind of low key developed a style with this team that's not so dependent on particular lineups. It just seems like, based on what you're saying, there's just a little bit more of a cushion, almost like I don't know the exact. Yeah,
that's what
it just gives us a little, a little slack there.
The weird thing is, the basically worst non-Schroeder lineup is the starting lineup against the Heat, where you basically put Grant Williams in for Rob. That's minus 14.1 in 60 minutes, which is not, and it's appeared in over a dozen games. I mean, that lineup has played together, and it absolutely does not work. So I would not be surprised if, which is weird. You think it would, but it just doesn't. And Grant and Al kill people together in every other lineup. So 60 minutes is still a pretty small sample size, but I mean, it's been bad. So
run that lineup at me again.
Yeah, it's last game's starting lineup. So basically, you take Grant Williams and just put him in for Rob with the starters.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things that we noted earlier, and I like the looks of this with Tyson there, because like you said earlier, he just seems to match more what you're losing with Rob. So it's like you don't have the same impact, but you at least have the same play style, like you had noted. And so that also lends itself to optimism, thinking when we do get into the playoffs and we do go back into our more structured or definitive defense, we can still have that, dynamic, that component. It won't be as potent, but still effective, hopefully.
Yeah, and a few numbers just to let you know how ridiculous Rob Williams is.
Spoons, that's what Spoons brings the numbers.
That's right. Yeah.
Spoonful of numbers. Bring them at me.
So with Rob, anytime Rob plays, when he's on the court, we outscore teams by 13 points by 100 possessions. Anytime, the second he subs off, that number drops to plus 4.6. So we're like 8.5 points better per 100 with Rob on the court. Tatum alone, his net rating when Rob is off drops by a little over half, from 18 to 7. And Jaylen Brown's drops from 17 to 4. So Rob has a serious impact on this. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Rob. He's been amazing. He has a massive impact on both sides of the ball, but we can survive, and that's all we need to do.
That's all, and that's all we want to have to do.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And I think what that also seems to subtly give some light to, and this came up in a podcast with Jason Tatum recently. He was on a podcast with the guy that's not Marcus Smart, Draymond Green, because Marcus Smart's better. And they were talking about and giving flowers to Rob for his passing, his playmaking. Yeah. And I thought it was funny because Draymond made a ridiculous comment saying no one talks about Rob's passing. And for me, I'm just like, wow, Draymond, tell me you're a casual without telling me you're a casual. Exactly. Because I know we've been talking about Rob as a playmaker and a passer since the moment he showed up, because it's the first thing this guy does anytime the ball touches his hands.
Yeah, immediate.
Is he makes a pass. He's blessed with this instinct.
It's incredible.
And I think the numbers you're giving out seem to support that as well, because his impact is felt by every single player that benefits from his playmaking at any given point.
Exactly. He may not get the assist, but he probably gets the pass that leads to the pass that leads to the assist. I mean, he gets that ball popping around, man. And that's one thing Theis cannot duplicate. And, we miss it on offense. You can tell. Mm-hmm.
So real quick, let's look ahead of the playoffs. It's kind of looking like it's going to be Toronto. It's kind of like, are you seeing another potential outcome?
I think Toronto or the Bulls, and actually user Tatum is God 1022, which is a username I can get behind, had a poll where he said, who would you rather face in the first round, the Raptors or the Bulls? And actually the sub voted pretty heavily in favor of the Bulls, like 190 to 130. So what are your thoughts, Jay? Who would you rather see? Because I would love to beat those fucking Raptors, dude. I would love to kill them.
And this is where I find I'm just I don't know if that I'm necessarily like uniquely different, because I think you and I might be similar, at least in this particular instance, where I don't want the easier opponent ever. Like, I want whatever's going to lead to the most competitive series. Like, because ultimately you're either, and I get it, schedule can impact your ability to actually get to that point, and luck has to break your way or this and that. I get that all, but I like what Ime said at one point, which is the moment you start trying to play for positioning and all that, like, you've already lost, right?
Sure.
Like, whoever shows up at the door, I just want them to pummel them. Now, if we're looking at matchups and just considering those dynamics and which teams might present more problems, Toronto's a bigger problem matchup wise. And here's why. Because Vooch, all right? Vooch for Chicago, exploitable. Because he's just not mobile enough.
It's true.
He's just not mobile enough.
You're right.
And he's such a critical part of their offense and their rebounding that if he can't stay on the floor for any particular reasons, whether it's just keeping up on offense or getting fouled out, whatever, that starts taking away a big part of their whole game plan. Toronto have perfect players to match up with us. Like right now they're playing Siakam at center. Like that's a problem. Like if we've got Rob, we can manage it.
Oh yeah,
right?
We would
and if you've got Embiid
with Rob,
and if you've got Embiid, like that's a problem for Toronto, right? Because he's not going to have a fun time against Embiid, no different than any other player for that matter. So I feel like the Toronto matchup is going to be a bloodbath. That is going to be a slugfest. It's probably going to go 7, and it'd go probably like a heavy 6, even with Rob, because I think that team gets slept on. I think they got players that really have an edge about them, even those young guys. And you just can't sleep on that coach. You can't sleep on Nurse, man. You can't sleep on that dude.
He's such a dick, but you can't. He's a great coach.
But like you either be good or be good at it, right? Shout out Lil Wayne.
Dude, so we're going to take like the complete opposite approaches here. I kind of want Toronto because I don't think they can score in the playoffs. We almost beat them with our entire bench playing. And they were fully healthy, all their starters. Like, I just do not think they'd be able to score at all. They're difficult to score against, but I just think it'd be an ugly, nasty 5-6 game series that we win pretty easily.
I don't think anyone will ever say they prefer a matchup against Nick Nurse. Like, he's just one of those guys where I think he could go in there with an AAU team and be a problem.
He couldn't handle Aaron Nesmith.
No one can
That's
handle.
right.
Aaron.
Wait till next year. It's going to happen. But
they should just stitch that on the back of his jersey.
yeah, I think not having Lonzo on the Bulls, and I know Lonzo's a pain in the ass, but he's a good player, man. He's a switchable defender. He can knock down open shots. He moves the ball. So not having Lonzo for the Bulls, they probably are the easier matchup, especially with that. And you're spot on, dude. Vooch is not a playoff player. That's why I never wanted to trade for him. I never wanted Sabonis either, because you just put them in pick and rolls 100 times a game in the playoffs, and they cannot defend it.
Barbecue chicken.
Exactly. Like Tatum and Rob going at like Sabonis in the playoffs would have been, I mean, just sad to watch, really, right?
Feasty.
Yeah. So it probably is the Bulls are the easier matchup, but man, I just want to beat the Raptors so bad.
Oh, and
I hate them.
Right. Like, and isn't that enough?
Fun. Yeah.
Isn't that enough?
Yeah, you're right. Maybe you're right.
So let's close out real quick. A quick tweet came out with regards to salary cap projections looking ahead. As far as I'm concerned, all of that is basically a different language. So Spoons, what is that tweet telling me, and how should I feel about it?
So the cap is going to be a few million more than we anticipated. And why that's important is because the Celtics clearly do not want to pay a lot of luxury tax. And we are effectively at the luxury tax line right now. So I think they're willing to go into it. It's just a matter of how much willing they're going into it. So because it's going to be more than we thought, we actually have like an extra $3 million of cushion that we didn't think. So that would allow us to stay within our owner's budget of whatever it is, 15 million over the luxury tax, 10 million, and just get a guy on a bigger contract. So it probably steps up the caliber of player we can get by a little bit. There's just more options, right? Like maybe Terrence Ross, not that I want Terrence Ross, really. You convinced me that was a bad idea, but just he's got like a $12 million contract. Maybe if our budget was $9 million over prior to this, we couldn't acquire him. Now we can because of the cap jump. So it's not a huge deal, but when you're literally like $500,000 under the tax line, or I think we might even be less than that right now, every penny matters. So that's really what that news is. It's good news for us, but also it benefits everybody. So it's not like some amazing advantage we get either. Also, the mid-level goes up in the same proportion. So, I mean, it's not some crazy groundbreaking thing, but it might help. It'll probably help.
Real quick, and this just might be a noob kind of question, and if I get ripped for like just not having this kind of awareness, that's fine. But my assumption would have been that over the last 2 years, the league would have suffered financially and would not be able to necessarily raise or increase the salary cap. So like, and they've kind of communicated as much, right?
So I think they were much more afraid of COVID than it ended up being bad. I don't know. So how it's all fucked up. So basically, here's how they do.
I think we could drop the mic on that.
Real quick. They just make these numbers up and then take the actual revenue and like disperse it as a percentage. So like the guys' salaries are percentages of the cap. They're not the actual number. So this is all a fiction. It's not the real dollars. So that's why they're like, fuck it. Let's spend 3 million more. Like, who cares? You know, it's like federal debt or something. We all just make it up.
Do you realize what you just did? You just pulled the curtain out. We're all meeting the Wizard of Oz right now. Like you're going to have people knocking on your door, man. You can't be doing all that. You're taking the wool.
Yeah. Adam
all right,
Silver.
Listen, Spoons, we're going to come back in a second. But before we get back to the pod, I just wanted to touch base because like I've been thinking a little bit lately, and you remember I've been talking to the doctor about all that curse.
Why, man?
Shit. Listen, I know.
It's not worth it.
But, dude, the guy tells me to follow the fucking buzz.
What does that even mean? Oh.
Dude, IT gets signed by the Hornets right afterwards, dude.
It's a conspiracy theory, man. It's not worth it.
Listen, I don't know. It's just, then all this shit with Rob, I'm just saying it's a little... This dude dude just sent me a message right now, dude. This dude just sent me a message right now.
Come on, man. It's not worth it, dude.
Listen,
he's making shit up.
I'm gonna call. I'm gonna call him after this.
Don't do it, Jay.
We got to get back to the show. I'm gonna call him after this. We're gonna get back to the show,
man.
On that, I'm gonna close this off there so that we can both get back to the game and see how this one closes out. I want to thank everybody for taking some time and spending some time here, having some Celtics talk with us here on the Celtics Reddit pod. Please keep a lookout for more oncoming content, especially from yours truly here, Mr. Spoons. When can they expect your next episode?
So I think I'm gonna record early next week. Vacation through kind of a wrench in my plans here a little bit, but next one should be coming out. I'm also writing something on Pritchard right now that I hope I will get out shortly, but we'll see. Writing's really hard, man.
Spoons is going to get his PP out there for everybody to
wait till
appreciate.
you see the title.
And of course, also next week, be on the lookout for the pod from the other side of the great
world.
blue there, the down under, if you will. And again, just getting ourselves ready and geared up for these playoffs. Hope everyone is doing well. Look forward to the next chance we get to spend with you. Till then, peace.